Little soldier boys went out to dine. One choked his little self, and then there were 9. 9 little soldier boys sat up very late. One overslept himself, and then there were 8.
The 3 of us can handle this. Blore was easily roped in. He expressed immediate agreement with their arguments. What you said about those china figures, sir, makes all the difference. I mean, that's crazy, that is. There's only one thing. You don't think this Owen's idea might be to do the job by proxy, as it were? Explain yourself, man. Well, I mean like this. After the racket last night, this young Mr. Marston gets the wind up and poisons himself. And then Rogers, he gets the wind up and he bumps off his wife. All according to UNO's plan. Armstrong shook his head. He stressed the point about the cyanide. Oh, yeah, I'd forgotten that. Not a natural thing to be carrying about with you, is it? How did it get into his drink then, sir? I've been thinking about that. Marston had several drinks that night. Between the time he had his last one and the time he finished the one before it, there was quite a gap. Now, during that time, his glass was lying about on some table or other. I think, though I can't be sure, it was on that little table near the window, and the window was open. Somebody could have slipped a dose of cyanide into the glass, without us all seeing him. We were all rather concerned elsewhere. That's true, said Armstrong. We'd all been attacked. We were walking about, moving about the room, arguing, indignant, intent on our own business. Yes, I think it could have been done. Well, the fact is, it must have been done. So, gentlemen, shall we make a start? Nobody's got a revolver by any chance. I suppose that's too much to hope for. I've got one. Lombard patted his pocket. Always carry one of them about with you, do you, sir? Usually. I've been in some tight places, you know. You've probably never been in a tighter place than you are today. Because if there is a lunatic hiding on this island, he's probably got a young arsenal on him, to say nothing of a knife or dagger or 2. You may be wrong there, Blore, because many homicidal lunatics are very quiet, unassuming people. Delightful fellows, in fact. Well, I don't feel this one's going to be that kind, Dr. Armstrong. The 3 men started on their tour of the island. It proved unexpectedly simple. On the northwest side, towards the coast, the cliffs fell sheer to the sea below, their surface unbroken. On the rest of the island there were no trees and very little cover. The 3 men worked carefully and methodically, beating up and down from the highest point to the water's edge, narrowly scanning the least irregularity in the rock which might point to the entrance of a cave. But there were no caves. They came at last, skirting the water's edge, to where General MacArthur sat, looking out to sea. It was very peaceful here, with the lap of the waves breaking over the rocks. The old man sat very upright, his eyes fixed on the horizon. He paid no attention to the approach of the searchers. His oblivion of them made one, at least, faintly uncomfortable. Blore thought to himself, "'Tis natural. Looks as though he's gone into a trance or something." Nice peaceful spot you found for yourself here, sir, eh? The General frowned and cast a quick look over his shoulder. "There's so little time, eh? I really must insist no one disturbs me." "We won't disturb you. We're just making a tour of the island, so to speak. Just wondered, you know, if someone might be hiding on it." "What? You don't understand. You don't understand at all. Please, go away. Blore retreated. He's crazy. No use talking to him. What did he say? Something about there being no time and he didn't want to be disturbed. Really? Dr. Armstrong frowned. I wonder now. The search of the island was practically completed. The three men stood on the highest point, looking over towards the mainland. There were no boats out. The wind was freshening. No fishing boats out. Means there's a storm coming. Damned nuisance you can't see the village from here. We could have signalled or something. We could light a bonfire tonight. The devil of it is that that's all probably been provided for. What do you mean? Well, I don't know what I mean. But they've probably been told if they see a fire it's a practical joke or something. Oh, it'll all be arranged. We're to be marooned here. No attention is to be paid to signals. The village might have been told there was some wager on. Some damn fool story, anyway. You think they'd swallow that? It's easier to believe than the truth. If the village were told that the island was to be isolated until Mr. Unknown Owen had quietly murdered all his guests, do you think they'd believe that? There are moments when I can't believe it myself. And yet, Philip Lombard, his lips curling back from his teeth, said, And yet, that's just it. You've said it, Doctor. Blore was gazing down into the water. Nobody could have clambered down here, I suppose. I doubt it. It's pretty sheer. And where would he hide? Well, there could be a hole in the cliff. If we had a boat, we could have rown round the island. If we had a boat, we'd be halfway to the mainland by now. Yes, true enough. We can make sure of this cliff, though. There's only one place there could be a recess, just a little to the right below here. Now, if you fellows get hold of a rope, you can let me down to make sure. Well, we might as well be sure. Though it seems absurd, on the face of it. I'll see if I can get hold of something. He started off briskly down to the house. Lombard stared up at the sky. The clouds were beginning to mass themselves together. The wind was increasing. He shot a sideways look at Armstrong. You're very silent, Doctor. What are you thinking? I was wondering exactly how mad old MacArthur was. Vera had been restless all the morning. She'd avoided Emily Brent with a kind of shuddering aversion. Miss Brent herself had taken a chair just round the corner of the house, so as to be out of the wind. She sat there knitting. Every time Vera thought of her, she seemed to see a pale, drowned face with seaweed entangled in the hair. A face that had once been pretty, impudently pretty perhaps, and which was now beyond the reach of pity or terror. And Emily Brent, placid and righteous, sat knitting. On the main terrace, Mr. Justice Wargrave sat huddled in a porter's chair. His head was poked down well into his neck. When Vera looked at him, she saw a man standing in the dock, a young man with fair hair and blue eyes, and a bewildered, frightened face. Edward Seaton. And in imagination she saw the judge's old hands put the black cap on his head and begin to pronounce sentence. After a while Vera strolled slowly down to the sea. She walked along towards the extreme end of the island, where an old man sat staring out to the horizon. General MacArthur stirred at her approach. His head turned. There was a queer mixture of questioning and apprehension in his look. It startled her. He stared intently at her for a minute or two. How queer, she thought. It's almost as though he knew. Ah, it's you. You've come. Do you like sitting here, looking out to sea? She sat down beside him. Yes, it's pleasant. It's a good place, I think, to wait. To wait? What are you waiting for? The end. But I think you know that, don't you? It's true, isn't it? We're all waiting for the end. What do you mean? None of us are going to leave the island. That's the plan. You know it, of course, perfectly. What perhaps you can't understand is the relief. The relief? Yes. Of course you're very young. You haven't got to that yet, but it does come. The blessed relief when you know what you've done with it all, and you haven't got to carry the burden any longer. You'll feel that too someday. I don't understand you. She felt suddenly afraid of this quiet old soldier. You see, I loved Leslie. I loved her very much. Leslie was your wife? Yes, my wife. I loved her. I was very proud of her. She was so pretty and so gay. Ah, yes. Yes, I loved Leslie. That's why I did it. You mean? It's not much good denying it now. Not when we're all going to die. I sent Richmond to his death. I suppose in a way it was murder. Curious. Murder. I've always been such a law-abiding man. It didn't seem like that at the time. I had no regrets. Served him damn well right, that's what I thought. But afterwards... Well, afterwards? I don't know. I don't know. It was all different, you see. I don't know if Leslie ever guessed. I don't think so. But you see, I didn't know about her any more. She'd gone far away where I couldn't reach her. And then she died, and I was alone. Vera said, "Alone, alone," and the echo of her voice came back to her from the rocks. You'll be glad too, when the end comes. I don't know what you mean. I know, my child. I know. You don't understand at all. General MacArthur looked out to sea again. He seemed unconscious of her presence behind him. He said, very gently and softly, Leslie? When Blore returned from the house with a rope coiled over his arm, he found Armstrong where he had left him, staring down into the depths. "Where's Mr. Lombard?" "Oh, gone to test some theory or other. He'll be back in a minute. Look here, Blore, I'm worried." "I think we're all worried." "No, of course, I didn't mean that. I was thinking of old MacArthur." "What about him?" "What we're looking for is a madman." "What price MacArthur?" "You mean he's homicidal?" "I wouldn't have said so for a minute. Of course, I'm not a specialist in mental diseases. I haven't really had any conversation with him. I haven't studied him from that point of view." Yeah. Well, I can tell you he's gaga, all right. But you're probably right. Damn it all. There must be someone hiding on the island. Ah, here comes Lombard. Right, let's fasten this rope. Now, I'll help myself all I can, and you keep a lookout for any sudden strain on the rope. After a minute or two, while they stood together watching Lombard's progress, Blore said, "Climbs like a cat, doesn't he? I should think he must have done some mountaineering in his time." "Maybe. Funny sort of cove altogether." "Do you know what I think?" "What?" "He's a wrong 'un." "In what way?" "I don't know exactly, but I wouldn't trust him a yard. I suppose he's had an adventurous life. I bet some of his adventures have had to be kept pretty dark. Did you happen to bring a revolver along with you, Doctor?" "Me? Good Lord, no. Why should I?" "Then why did Mr. Lombard?" "Well, I suppose habit." Pfft. A sudden pull came on the rope. For some moments they had their hands full. Presently, when the strain relaxed, Blore said, "There are habits and habits. Mr. Lombard takes a revolver to out-of-the-way places right enough, and a primus and a sleeping bag and a supply of bug powder, no doubt. But habit won't make him bring the whole outfit down here. It's only in books people carry revolvers around as a matter of course." Armstrong shook his head perplexedly. They leaned over and watched Lombard's progress. His search was thorough, and they could see at once that it was futile. Presently he came up over the edge of a cliff. He wiped the perspiration from his forehead. "Well, we're up against it. He's in the house or nowhere." The house was easily searched. They went through the few outbuildings first, and then turned their attention to the building itself. Mrs. Rogers' yard measure, discovered in the kitchen dresser, assisted them. But there were no hidden spaces left unaccounted for. Everything was plain and straightforward. A modern structure devoid of concealments. They went through the ground floor first. As they mounted to the bedroom floor, they saw through the landing window Rogers carrying out a tray of cocktails to the terrace. "Wonderful animal, isn't it, the good servant? Carries on with an impressive countenance." "Rogers is a first-class butler, I'll say that for him. His wife was a pretty good cook, too. At dinner last night." They turned into the first bedroom. 5 minutes later they faced each other on the landing. No one hiding, no possible hiding place. "There's a little stair here." "I believe that leads up to the servants' room." "Well, there might be a place under the roof, for cisterns and such. It's the best chance, the only one." And it was then, as they stood there, that they heard the sound from above. A small, furtive footfall overhead. They all heard it. Armstrong grasped Blor's arm. Lombard held up an admonitory finger. "Quiet! Listen!" It came again. Someone moving softly, furtively overhead. Armstrong whispered, "He's actually in the bedroom itself. The room where Mrs. Rogers' body is." Blor whispered back, "Of course. That's the best hiding place he could have chosen. Nobody likely to go up there. Now then, quiet as you can." They crept stealthily upstairs. On the little landing outside the door of the bedroom they paused again. Yes, someone was in the room. There was a faint creak from within. Blor whispered, "Now!" He flung open the door and rushed in, the other two close behind him. Then all three stopped dead. Rogers was in the room, his hands full of garments. "Sorry, Rogers. We heard someone moving about, and, well, we thought—" "I'm sorry, gentlemen. I was just moving my things. I take it there'll be no objection if I took one of the vacant guest chambers on the floor below. The smallest room." It was to Armstrong that he spoke, and Armstrong replied, Of course. Get on with it." He avoided looking at the sheeted figure lying on the bed. "Thank you, sir." Rogers went out of the room with his arm full of belongings, and went down the stairs to the floor below. Armstrong moved over to the bed, and, lifting the sheet, looked down on the peaceful face of the dead woman. There was no fear there now, just emptiness. "I wish I'd got my stuff here. I'd like to know what drug it was. Let's get finished. I feel it in my bones we're not going to find anything." Blor was wrestling with the bolts of a low manhole. "That chap moves damn quietly. A minute or two ago we saw him in the garden. None of us heard him come upstairs. I suppose that's why we assumed it was a stranger moving about up here." Blor disappeared into a cavernous darkness. Lombard pulled a torch from his pocket and followed. 5 minutes later, 3 men stood on an upper landing and looked at each other. They were dirty and festooned with cobwebs, and their faces were grim. There was no one on the island but their 8 selves. "So we've been wrong all along. Built up a nightmare of suspicion and fantasy, all because of a coincidence of 2 deaths. Hang it all, I am a doctor. I know something about suicides. Anthony Marston was not a suicidal type. Look, about the woman, Mrs. Rogers." "Yeah. Is it possible that could have been an accident?" "Well, in what way?" "Look here, Doctor. You gave her some dope, didn't you?" "Dope? What do you mean?" "Last night, You said yourself you gave her something to make her sleep. Oh, yes, a harmless sedative. But what was it exactly? I gave her a mild dose of Trional. A perfectly harmless preparation. Look, you didn't give her an overdose, did you? No, I did not. It's just possible, though, isn't it? I mean, you could have made a mistake. These things do happen. I did nothing of the sort, and the suggestion is ridiculous. Or do you think that I gave her an overdose on purpose, Blore? Look here, you two, let's keep our heads, Don't start slinging accusations about. I only suggested that the doctor might have made a mistake. Doctors can't afford to make mistakes of that kind, my friend. But it wouldn't have been the first, would it, if that gramophone record is to be believed? Armstrong went white. Philip Lombard said quickly and angrily to Blore, "What's the sense of making yourself offensive? We're all in the same boat. We have to pull together. How about your own pretty little spot of perjury?" Perjury? Perjury be damned! That was a foul lie! And you might try and shut me up, Mr. Lombard, but there's things I want to know, and one of them's about you. Me? Yes, I want to know why you brought a revolver down here on a pleasant social visit. Oh, you do you? Yes, I do, Mr. Lombard. You know, Blore, you're not quite the fool you look. Well, that's as may be. What about the revolver? I brought it because I expected to run into a spot of trouble. You didn't say that last night. Holding out on us? In a way, yes. Well, come on then, out with it. I allowed you all to think that I was asked here in the same way as most of the others. But it's not quite true. As a matter of fact, I was approached by someone called Morris, and he offered me 100 guineas to come down here and keep my eyes open. Said I'd got a reputation for being a good man in a tight spot. Well, that's all. But surely he told you more than that? No, he didn't. Shut up like a clam. I could take it or leave it. Those were his words. Well, I was hard up. I took it. Why didn't you tell us all this last night? My dear man, Lombard shrugged eloquent shoulders. How was I to know that last night was not exactly the eventuality I was here to cope with? I lay low and told a non-committal story. But now you think differently. Indeed I do, Doctor. I believe now that I am in the same boat as the rest of you. That 100 guineas was just Mr. Owen's little bit of cheese to get me into the trap. Along with the rest of you. For we are in a trap. I'll take my oath on that. Mrs. Rogers' death, Tony Marston's, the disappearing soldier boys on the dinner table. Oh, yes, Mr. Owen's hand is plainly to be seen. But where the devil is Mr. Owen himself? Downstairs the gong pealed a solemn call to lunch. Rogers was standing by the dining-room door. As the three men descended the stairs, he moved a step or two forward. I hope lunch will be satisfactory. It's cold ham and cold tongue, and I've boiled up some potatoes. There's cheese and biscuits and some tinned fruits. Sounds all right. Store's holding out, then. Well, there's plenty of food, sir, of the tinned variety. The large is very well stocked. A necessity, that, I should say, on an island where you could be cut off from the mainland for a considerable period. Lombard nodded. Rogers murmured as he followed the three men into the dining-room. It worries me Fred Narracott hasn't been over today. It's peculiarly unfortunate, as you might say. Yes, peculiarly unfortunate describes it very well. Miss Brent came into the room. She'd just dropped a ball of wool and was carefully rewinding the end of it. As she took her seat at table, she remarked, The weather is changing. The wind is quite strong, and there are white horses on the sea. Mr. Justice Wargrave came in. He walked with a slow, measured tread. He darted quick looks from under his bushy eyebrows at the other occupants of the room. You have had an active morning. There was a faint, malicious pleasure in his voice. Vera Claythorne hurried in. She was a little out of breath. "Oh, I hope you didn't wait for me. Am I late?" "You're not the last. The General isn't here yet." They sat round the table. Rogers addressed Miss Brent. "Will you begin, madam, or will you wait?" "General MacArthur is sitting by the sea. I don't expect he could hear the gong there. Anyway, he's a little bit vague today, I think." "I can go down and inform him luncheon's ready." "No, Rogers, that's all right. I'll go. You others start lunch." Dr. Armstrong left the room. Behind him he heard Rogers' voice. "Will you take cold tongue or cold ham, madam?" The 5 people sitting round the table seemed to find conversation difficult. Outside, sudden gusts of wind came up and died away. Vera shivered a little. "There's a storm coming." Blore made a contribution to the discourse. "There was an old fellow in the train from Plymouth yesterday. He kept saying a storm was coming. It's wonderful, isn't it, how they know the weather, these old salts." Rogers went round the table collecting the meat plates. Suddenly, with the plates held in his hand, he stopped. "Listen, there's someone running." They could all hear it, running feet across the terrace. And in that minute they knew without being told. As by common accord, they all rose to their feet and stood looking towards the door. Dr. Armstrong appeared, his breath coming fast. "General MacArthur! Dead!" The voice burst from Vera explosively. "Yes, he's dead." There was a pause, a long pause. 7 people looked at each other and could find no words to say. The storm broke just as the old man's body was borne in through the door. The others were standing in the hall. There was a sudden hiss and roar as the rain came down. As Blore and Armstrong passed up the stairs with their burden, Vera Claythorne turned suddenly and went into the deserted dining room. It was as they had left it. The sweet course stood ready on the sideboard, untasted. Vera went up to the table. She was there a minute or 2 later when Rogers came softly into the room. His eyes asked a question. "Oh, miss, I just came to see—" In a loud, harsh voice that surprised herself, Vera said, "You're quite right, Rogers. Look for yourself. There are only 7 now." General MacArthur had been laid on his bed. After making a last examination, Armstrong left the room and came downstairs. He found the others assembled in the drawing-room. Miss Brent was knitting, Vera Claythorne was standing by the window looking out at the hissing rain, Blore was sitting squarely in a chair, his hands on his knees. Lombard was walking restlessly up and down. At the far end of the room, Mr. Justice Wargrave was sitting in a grandfather chair. His eyes were half closed. They opened as the doctor came into the room. He said in a clear, penetrating voice,
"Well, doctor?"
"No question of heart failure or anything like that. MacArthur was hit with a life-preserver or some such thing on the back of the head." A little murmur went round.
"Did you find the actual weapon used?"
"No."
"Nevertheless, you're sure of your facts?"
"I am quite sure."
"Then we know now exactly where we are."
There was no doubt who was in charge of the situation. This morning Wargrave had sat huddled in his chair on the terrace, refraining from any overt activity. Now he assumed command with the ease born of a long habit of authority. He definitely presided over the court.
"This morning, gentlemen, while I was sitting on the terrace, I was an observer of your activities. There could be little doubt as to your purpose. You were searching the island for an unknown murderer."
"That's quite right, sir."
"You have come, doubtless, to the same conclusion that I did, namely that the deaths of Anthony Marston and Mrs. Rogers were neither accidental nor suicides. No doubt you also reached a certain conclusion as to the purpose of Mr. Owen in enticing us to this island."
"Yes, he's a madman, a loony."
"Well, that's almost certainly true. But it hardly affects the issue.
Our main preoccupation is this: to save our lives. But there's no one on the island, I tell you, said Armstrong in a trembling voice. No one. The judge stroked his jaw. In the sense you mean, no. I came to that conclusion early this morning. I could have told you that your search would be fruitless. Nevertheless, I am strongly of the opinion that Mr. Owen, to give him the name he himself has adopted, is on the island, very much so. Given the scheme in question, which is neither more nor less than the execution of justice upon certain individuals for offences which the law cannot touch, there is only one way in which that scheme could be accomplished. Mr. Owen could only come to the island in one way. It's perfectly clear. Mr. Owen is one of us. No, no, no! It was Vera who burst out. The judge turned a keen eye on her. My dear young lady, this is no time for refusing to look facts in the face. We are all in grave danger. One of us is U.N. Owen, and we do not know which it is. Of the 10 people who came to this island, 3 are definitely cleared. Anthony Marston, Mrs. Rogers, and General MacArthur. They have gone beyond suspicion. But there are 7 of us left. Of those 7, one is, if I may so express myself, a bogus little soldier boy. Do I take it that you all agree? It's fantastic, but I suppose you're right. There's not a doubt about it. And if you ask me, I've got a very good idea. But a quick gesture of Mr. Justice Wargrave's hand stopped him. We will come to that presently. At the moment all I wish to establish is that we are in agreement on the facts. Your argument seems logical. I agree, one of us is possessed by a devil. Vera murmured, I can't believe it. I can't. Lombard? Well, I agree, sir, absolutely. The judge nodded his head in a satisfied manner. Then let us now examine the evidence. To begin with, is there any reason for suspecting one particular person? Mr. Blore, I think you have something to say. Well, Lombard's got a revolver. He didn't tell the truth last night. He admits it. Oh, dear, oh, dear. I suppose I'd better explain again. He did so, telling the story briefly and succinctly. But what's to prove it? There's nothing to corroborate your story. The judge coughed. Unfortunately, we are all in that position. It is only our word to go upon. You have none of you yet grasped what a very peculiar situation this is. To my mind, there's only one course of procedure to adopt. Is there anyone whom we can definitely eliminate from suspicion on the evidence which is in our possession? Dr. Armstrong said quickly, I'm a well-known professional man. The mere idea that I can be suspected of... The judge again raised a hand. I, too, am a well-known person. But, my dear sir, that proves less than nothing. Doctors have gone mad before now. Judges have gone mad. So have policemen, Mr. Blore. Lombard said, At any rate, I suppose we can leave the women out of it. The judge's eyebrows rose. He said in the famous acid tone that counsel knew so well, Do I understand you to assert that women are not subject to homicidal mania? Well, no, of course not, but all the same it hardly seems possible. I take it, Dr. Armstrong, that a woman would have been physically capable of striking the blow that killed poor MacArthur? Perfectly capable, given the suitable instruments, such as a rubber truncheon or kosh. It would require no undue exertion of force. Not at all. And the other 2 deaths have resulted from the administration of drugs. That no one will dispute, and so is easily compassed by a person of the smallest physical strength. I think you're mad. The judge's eyes turned slowly till they rested on Vera Claythorne. It was the dispassionate stare of a man well used to weighing humanity in the balance. She thought, "He's just seeing me as a specimen." And the thought came to her with real surprise. "He doesn't like me much." "My dear young lady, do try and restrain your feelings. I am not accusing you. I hope, Miss Brent, that you are not offended by my insistence that all of us are equally under suspicion." Emily Brent was knitting. She did not look up. "The idea that I should be accused of taking a fellow creature's life, not to speak of the lives of 3 fellow creatures, is, of course, quite absurd to anyone who knows anything of my character. But I quite appreciate the fact that we are all strangers to one another, and in these circumstances nobody can be exonerated without the fullest proof. There is, as I have said, a devil amongst us." "Then we are agreed. There can be no elimination on the ground of character or position alone." "What about Rogers?" "What about him?" "Well, to my mind, Rogers seems pretty well ruled out." "Indeed? And on what grounds?" "Well, he hasn't got the brains, for one thing. And for another, his wife was one of the victims." The judge's heavy eyebrows rose once more. "In my time, young man, several people have come before me accused of the murders of their wives, and have been found guilty." "Yes, I agree. Wife murder is perfectly possible, but not this particular kind. I can believe in Rogers killing his wife because he was scared of her breaking down and giving him away, or because he'd taken a dislike to her, or because he wanted to link up with some nice little bit rather less long in the tooth. But I can't see him in the lunatic Mr. Owen category, dealing out crazy justice, and starting on his own wife for a crime they both committed." "You are assuming hearsay to be evidence. We do not know that Rogers and his wife conspired to murder their employer. That may be a false statement made so that Rogers should appear to be in the same position as ourselves. Mrs. Rogers' terror last night may have been due to the fact that she realized her husband was mentally unhinged." "Well, have it your own way. UN Owen is one of us. No exceptions allowed. We all qualify." "My point is that there can be no exceptions allowed on the score of character, position, or probability. What we must now examine is the probability of eliminating one or more persons on the facts. To put it simply, is there among us one or more persons who could not possibly have administered either cyanide to Anthony Marston or an overdose of sleeping draught to Mrs. Rogers, and who had no opportunity of striking the blow that killed General MacArthur?" Blaw's face lit up. "Now you're talking, sir. That's the stuff. Let's go into it. As regards young Marston, I don't think there's anything to be done. It's already been suggested that someone from outside slipped something into the dregs of his glass before he refilled it the last time, but a person actually in the room could have done that much more easily. I can't remember if Rogers was in the room, but any of the rest of us could certainly have done it. Now, take the woman, Rogers. The people who stand out there are her husband and the doctor. Either of them could have done it as easy as winking." "I protest, that's absolutely uncalled for. I swear the dose I gave that woman was perfectly—"
"Dr. Armstrong, your indignation is very natural. Nevertheless, you must admit that the facts have got to be faced. Either you or Rogers could have administered a fatal dose with the greatest ease. So let us now consider the position of the other people present. What chance had I, Inspector Blore, Miss Brent, Miss Claythorne, and Mr. Lombard of administering poison? Can any one of us be completely and entirely eliminated? I think not."
"Well, I was nowhere near the woman. All of you can swear to that."
"As far as my memory serves me, the facts were these. Please correct me if I make a misstatement.
Mrs. Rogers was lifted onto the sofa by Anthony Marston and Mr. Lombard, and Dr. Armstrong went to her. He sent Rogers for brandy. There was then a question raised as to where the voice we had heard came from. We all went into the next room, with the exception of Miss Brent, who remained in this room, alone with the unconscious woman. A spot of colour came into Emily Brent's cheeks. She stopped knitting. "This is outrageous!" When we returned to the room, you, Miss Brent, were bending over the woman on the sofa. "Is common humanity a criminal offence?" "I am only establishing facts." Rogers entered the room with the brandy then, which of course he could quite well have doctored before entering the room. The brandy was administered to the woman, and shortly afterwards her husband and Dr. Armstrong assisted her up to bed, where Dr. Armstrong gave her a sedative. Yeah, that's what happened, absolutely. And that lets out the judge, Mr. Lombard, myself, and Miss Claythorne. Now we're getting somewhere. Ah, but does it? We must take into account every possible eventuality. I don't get you. Upstairs in her room, Mrs. Rogers is lying in bed. The sedative that the doctor has given her begins to take effect. She is vaguely sleepy and acquiescent. Supposing that at that moment there is a tap on the door, and someone enters bringing her, shall we say, a tablet or a draught, with a message that the doctor says you are to take this. Do you imagine for 1 minute that she would not have swallowed it obediently, without thinking twice about it? There was silence. Blore shifted his feet and frowned. Philip Lombard said, "I don't believe that story for a minute. Besides, none of us left this room for hours afterwards. There was Marston's death and all the rest of it." "Someone could have left his or her bedroom later." "But then Rogers would have been up there." "No," said Armstrong. "Rogers went downstairs to clear up the dining room and pantry. Anyone could have gone up to the woman's bedroom then, without being seen." "Surely, Doctor, the woman would have been fast asleep by then, under the influence of the drug you had administered." "In all likelihood, yes. But that's not a certainty. Until you've prescribed for a patient more than once, you cannot tell their reaction to different drugs. There's sometimes a considerable period before a sedative takes effect. It depends on the personal idiosyncrasy of the patient towards that particular drug. Of course, you would say that, Doctor, suits your book, eh?" Again Armstrong's face darkened with anger, but again the passionless, cold little voice stopped the words on his lips. "No good result can come from recrimination. Facts are what we have to deal with. It is established, I think, that there is a possibility of such a thing as I have outlined occurring. I agree that its probability value is not high, though there again it depends on who that person might have been. The appearance of Miss Brent or of Miss Claythorne on such an errand would have occasioned no surprise in the patient's mind. I agree that the appearance of myself or of Mr. Blore or of Mr. Lombard could have been, to say the least of it, unusual. But I still think the visit would have been received without the awakening of any real suspicion." "And that gets us where?" "We have now dealt with the second killing, and have established the fact that no one of us can be completely exonerated from suspicion. We come now to the death of General MacArthur. That took place this morning. I will ask anyone who considers that he or she has an alibi to state it in so many words. I myself will state at once that I have no valid alibi. I spent the morning sitting on the terrace and meditating on the singular position in which we all find ourselves. I sat on that chair on the terrace for the whole morning until the gong went, but there were, I should imagine, several periods during the morning when I was quite unobserved, and during which it would have been possible for me to walk down to the sea, kill the general, and return to my chair. There is only my word for the fact that I never left the terrace. In the circumstances that is not enough. There must be proof. I was with Mr. Lombard and Dr. Armstrong all morning. They'll bear me out. You went to the house for a rope? Well, of course I did. Went straight there and straight back, you know that. You're a long time. What the hell do you mean by that, Armstrong? I only said you were a long time. I had to find it, didn't I? You can't lay your hands on a coil of rope in a minute. During Inspector Blaw's absence, were you two gentlemen together? Certainly. Oh, that is, Lombard went off for a few minutes, but I remained where I was. Yes, well, I wanted to test the possibilities of heliographing to the mainland. Wanted to find the best spot. But I was only absent a minute or two. Armstrong nodded. That's right. Not long enough to do a murder, I assure you. Did either of you two glance at your watches? No. I wasn't wearing one. So a minute or two is a vague expression. Miss Brent? I took a walk with Miss Claythorne up to the top of the island. Afterwards I sat on the terrace in the sun. I don't think I noticed you there. No, I was round the corner of the house to the east. It was out of the wind there. And you sat there till lunchtime? Yes. Miss Claythorne? I was with Miss Brent early this morning. After that I wandered about a bit. Then I went down and I talked to General MacArthur. What time was that? Oh, well, I don't know. About an hour before lunch, I think. It might have been less. Was it after we'd spoken to him or before? I don't know. He was very queer. In what way was he queer? He said we were all going to die. He said he was waiting for the end. He frightened me. What did you do next? I went back up to the house. Then just before lunch I went out again and up behind the house. I've been terribly restless all day. There remains Rogers, though I doubt if his evidence will add anything to our sum of knowledge. Rogers, summoned before the court, had very little to tell. He'd been busy all the morning about household duties and with the preparation of lunch. He'd taken cocktails onto the terrace before lunch and had then gone up to remove his things from the attic to another room. He had not looked out of the window during the morning and had seen nothing that could have any bearing upon the death of General MacArthur. He would swear definitely that there had been 8 china figures upon the dining table when he laid table for lunch. At the conclusion of Roger's evidence there was a pause. Mr. Justice Wargrave cleared his throat. Lombard murmured to Vera Claythorne, "The summing up will now take place." We have inquired into the circumstances of these 3 deaths to the best of our ability. Whilst probability in some cases is against certain people being implicated, yet we cannot say definitely that any one person can be considered cleared of all complicity. I reiterate my positive belief that of the 7 persons assembled in this room, 1 is a dangerous and probably insane criminal. There is no evidence before us as to who that person is. All we can do at the present juncture is to consider what measures we can take for communicating with the mainland for help, and in the event of help being delayed, as is only too possible given the state of the weather, what measures we must adopt to ensure our safety. I would ask you all to consider this carefully, and to give me any suggestions that may occur to you. In the meantime, I warn everybody to be upon his or her guard. So far, the murderer has had an easy task, since his victims have been unsuspicious. From now on, it is our task to suspect each and every one amongst us. Forewarned is forearmed. Take no risks, and be alert to danger. That is all. Philip Lombard murmured under his breath. The court will now adjourn.
8 little soldier boys travelling in Devon. One said he'd stay there, and then there were 7.